She made the Arias trade, getting Luis Arias for Pablo Lopez, and you can certainly say, hey, I'd rather have the starting pitcher, but Arias helped change that franchise's offensive identity. The Soler signing was a really good one. She built a bullpen. This one-run game record that they had last season in 2022 that was so horrible, they turned it around into a great one-run record in 2023. And to top it all off, what was the final outcome of all that Kim Ng did? The Marlins making their first playoff appearance, albeit in expanded format, for the first time in a full season. The first time in a full season since they won the 2003 World Series. Common denominator is the owner. The owner who's not keeping competent people, highly qualified people, people who did well for him. They don't want to stay. Bruce Sherman, you've got a franchise that is challenged. We know that. It's tough to build an audience in the South Florida market. There are a lot of other things to do in that beautiful weather. And the Marlins have had trouble doing a lot of things. But my goodness, when you get a competent operator, not just competent, highly skilled, respected, someone who has brought great attention and positive press to your franchise, and she wants to leave, and you run her off, Bruce Sherman, dork of the week.
Okay, Russ, in my mind, a very disturbing news story that emerged over the past 24 hours is Kim Ng's departure from the Miami Marlins as their general manager. So I'll lay out a few things that we read from some stories that circulated from a few people that have done a great job covering it. So she had a mutual option for next year that was picked up by the team. She said no. Generally, if you're in a spot like this, you're not going to be a lame duck general manager. We talk about that lame duck status for GMs and for managers all the time. So it seemed like they were comfortable doing that. You find out that they are trying to hire someone above her position, even though she was leading the front office and led the Marlins to their first full season playoff appearance since 2003. She's doing this with almost no financial resources compared to the rest of the division and all of Major League Baseball. She makes some savvy trades at the deadline, which includes Jake Berger and Josh Bell to help the offense. They make the playoffs. This also, despite not having Yuri Perez and Sandy Alcantara healthy during that time period. One should be back next year. Obviously, the other one going through Tommy John surgery. Add all of that up. How the fuck does this happen? And I was a huge fan of the fact that this is, long overdue, the first female general manager to run a baseball team and to run a franchise in general in one of the four major North American sports. And then I don't think this is getting a lot of coverage, enough coverage in my mind, Russ, the aftermath. Okay, so she takes a job. She's a pioneer. Many people looking up to her. She does her job. Just a few years in, she does her job, brings a team that never makes it to the playoffs into the postseason. And then essentially the team has kicked her to the curb. That's what I'm reading here. What's your take on all of this?
You make really good points there, Scott. I think when you look at the situation as a whole, you got to think when Derek Jeter, was named the president of the Marlins, he came in, was going to be, the face of that franchise from the business baseball operations side, brings Kim Ng in to be the general manager. And then because of, the way that ownership group wanted to operate, Derek Jeter says, you know what, man, I'm cool. Kim Ng stays and builds this organization up, builds the minor league system. And, they make shrewd trades, as you mentioned. They hire Skip Schumacher to be the manager of the ball club, and they play well, and they play themselves into the postseason. Now, that's not something that should be just said ho-hum. They made the postseason. We're talking about an organization that's made the postseason 4 times in their franchise's history. 2 of those times they won the World Series. The other time was the 2020 shortened season when everybody made it into the postseason. So we're talking about something that is significant for this franchise. And then for the person who built you up to that point to say, yeah, did a great job, but we're going to hire somebody to be the decision maker. I can completely understand how Kim Ng could look at that situation and say, yeah, no, I'm not going to do that, right? There was nobody else here making these decisions for me. And now we're not going to have a David Stearns, Billy Epler situation where, Billy Epler, before he resigned, that was going to be the situation he was in, where he was the sole decision maker And then Steve Cohen says, no, we're going to hire somebody else to be, above you. That person obviously being David Stearns now. And I completely understand somebody saying, I feel like I've done a more than adequate job under constraints that most GMs don't have to be under, and we've had success. This doesn't make much sense. And I think being able to stick to your guns, knowing that there are only 30 jobs out there. And she waited a long time to be a general manager in the big leagues. There were stories written about her 20 years ago that said she would be the first woman to be a GM in baseball, and she did it. So I don't think she's going to be without work for long. But at the same time, it shouldn't have to get to a point where you have to leave a job because you feel you're not getting your just due in that role, and you feel like your employer doesn't respect the work that you've done.
Russ, who makes this decision? Obviously the owner, but I just don't understand it. Who can get in the owner's ear and say, man, Kim Ng, she's not doing a great job. She got us to the postseason, made great trades. In the Billy Epler thing for me, everyone knew David Stearns was going there the whole time. It wasn't like that was a hidden secret. I mean, he took a year off basically from the Brewers to go be the Mets president this year. So I don't understand who. I mean, Derek Jeter left because of the owner, basically. I mean, he didn't say that, but you can kind of infer with what he said. He didn't agree with the direction, right? Now Kim Ng leaves. Who's out there to hire, and who would they have possibly hired to go over her head? Because everyone except the Red Sox positions are filled. So who would they even hire to go over her head that everyone's reporting now?
I don't have the answer to that one, AJ. The only thing I know as far as, who makes that decision, it comes from that ownership group themselves. And I think you know a similar situation here in the city of Chicago where it's like,
bring Kim home, bring Kim home, bring Kim home.
To run the front office?
I think you have a situation sometimes with a lot of these ownership groups where it's like, sure, at the end of the day, I'm going to bring in all these people to help us make these decisions, but I own the team. And so I'm going to make the decisions. And I don't think there's a person you could just gain their ear and just say, hey, this person's not doing a great job, or this person is doing a great job. I don't know if that matters if you haven't made up in your mind that this is the direction you're going to go in. I imagine the people who are down there who have been reporting on this, who know a little bit more about the situation than I do, will get to the bottom of it. But it doesn't feel right. It doesn't feel like this is the way this situation should have gone for a organization that was actually looking like they had their arrow pointing up.
And their arrow was pointing up because of Kim Ng. Can we look at this? And I always mix up using the word objectively and subjectively, but can we look at this objectively without looking at it as she is a female GM and they're trying to bring somebody in that I'm assuming is a male? Can we look at it that way?
I would look at it and then say the optics, because, hey, the reality is she is the first female GM, right? She is a woman who is as a high-ranking role in a front office. The optics don't look good. I think the reality of the situation is the on-field product showed that she was doing her job well. And so why did you as an organization feel like she wasn't doing the job well? There are plenty of organizations around the big leagues where you can objectively say, yeah, this on-field product has not been good and we need to make a change, where teams don't make a change. I think we see it all the time. So that's why, it raises your eyebrows a little bit when you see a situation like this. We're like, all right, a team has made, prior to this season, the postseason 3 times. And the GM that they bring in a couple years ago and built this team up and built this minor league system up and made these trades to get them back to the postseason, did that, brought in a manager that is going to be top 3 for managers of the year probably, and now we want to hire somebody above her. Doesn't really make sense.
Isn't this where the owner needs to be held accountable by his other owners and say, come on out? And I know they're not the most accountable group, but come on out and say why you did this. Because on the surface, this makes us look like a bunch of misogynistic pigs.
I don't disagree with you, Kratzy, that somebody has to answer for this as to why these decisions were made. I think you and I both know that we don't work in a business where ownership groups really come out and want to answer for decisions they make. They kind of just make them and everybody moves on. But I don't think this is one that's going to go away very easily. And I don't think this is one that people will stop, making phone calls and sending emails and requesting an answer for this, because it just doesn't make sense for a lot of different angles, right? It doesn't make baseball sense. It doesn't make sense for, that ball club and where they want it to go, right? Like the fact that after Derek Jeter said, you know what, guys, I'm cool, that they were able to have somebody to lead them to this point. And then you say, hey, appreciate you for your services, but we're going to go in a different direction and add somebody above you. That we haven't seen something like this.
No, Russ, my question is, though, we're acting like, I mean, and I hate to play, devil's advocate here, but she didn't get fired. She did. No, she had a mutual option, and she declined her option. Now, listen, I understand she didn't want to have somebody ahead of her or on top of her. I get that, but we're making it seem like the ownership was like, you're fired. You didn't do a good job. No. I mean, they just said, hey, we want someone.
They quote, essentially fired her, and I'll tell you why. She was never told in the recent past that she's going to do a bang-up job, crush it, get this team to the playoffs, and then we're going to hire someone above you, and we're going to pick up your mutual option. So you get 1 year, and that person above you can let you go. Like, no, you're out of here.
I understand.
You're being told F you. You're in a job that you are essentially being demoted of your responsibilities. I think it's spoken without spoken. And I think it's probably the optics right there, Russ, is that, well, she's leaving because we got bailed out by this mutual
But then
option.
it all started coming out, which is great. And I want to see the owner sat down in front of the media and said, okay, explain. It'll never happen.
No, because owners don't talk. Here's my thing, because this, in my mind, when this story gets picked up more, Kratz, it is going to circulate and look exactly like how you said it. This is awful optics in how it goes down, because this does not really happen in our sport. So somebody needs to speak. An owner, most owners don't talk because they suck. Then a commissioner, someone in PR, someone needs to speak and explain why a situation like this just went down, or it is a mark against the sport, an ugly mark.
AJ, to your question there, I understand that she on her own free will said, you know what, I wanted to decline my option here. At the same time, if you're going to have your legs cut off from underneath you, where it feels like, well, my voice doesn't matter anymore, after it did all this, you could have done this for a long time. After Derek Jeter left, you could have hired somebody to be the president of baseball operations, but you didn't. And Kim Ng was the person that had to lead the charge in baseball operations and got you to a place where people looked at your ball club differently. And that's the part for me. Like, people looked at the Marlins like, it's the Marlins. But now you got to the point where, like, no, the Marlins are a playoff team. The Marlins have some dudes. The Marlins could be a team to be reckoned with in a division that is very tough to compete in. And they played good baseball. And now, after the season that you had, with a manager that's brand new that you feel really good about, this is how people are going to remember your season. And it's unfortunate for the people in that organization that got it to this point. But at the end of the day, this is the situation that they find themselves in. So no, she didn't get fired technically, but she definitely was about to get her legs cut off from underneath her if somebody else was going to have to come and be, her boss.
And my thing is, teams do dumb shit all the time. And, the world doesn't care about the Marlins. The world cares about the optics, again, of the first female general manager taking over a role, succeeding, thriving with limited resources, and then being demoted for it. That is fucking awful. Can't wait to hear more from somebody about this. Somebody with position.